Michael Roberto.
Good evening, Council. Michael Roberto, 317 South Chapman Street, District 4. Recent discussions of a parity study of the East Greensboro economy took me back to some reporting I did for the Carolina Peacemaker in the mid-1980s. Here I offer a few comparisons between conditions then and now based on the 1980, 1990, and 2010 censuses, a 1985 study of Southeast Greensboro by Leadership Greensboro, the State of the City report for 2011, and this parity study that we have all been discussing. And I want to thank Karen Markovic of the city staff and Afrika Kilimanjaro at the Carolina Peacemaker for helping me to put this together. According to the parity study, the median household income in East Greensboro in 2011 was $21,617 compared to $42,927 in West Greensboro. Now, the federal poverty line in 2011 for a family of 4 was $22,350. Since the city's overall poverty rate was 20%, we can reasonably assume that many more people in East Greensboro living above the median household income were and still are living in poverty, given what it really takes for a family of 4 to live above mere subsistence. Parity study also confirms other things that I won't go into. In January of 1985, I reported findings of the Southeast Greensboro study, which were based on the 1980 census. Unemployment was in Southeast Greensboro was 23%. The poverty rate was 19.6%. The federal poverty line was $10,650. Median household income was $12,394. The 36.4% of total households were female-headed, and of those, 35.8% were below the poverty line. Basically, women, unskilled, uneducated, working minimum wage jobs, caught in an unbreakable cycle of poverty, and without any daycare, were tossed back into the workplace. Now, I'm running out of time here, so let me just cut to the chase here. On the basis of this study, Ruth L. Howard and I did an extensive interview of 8 leaders in the black community in Greensboro. It was called View from the Southeast. We took the logo, we took the photograph from the other side of the trestle looking in on the downtown. And I would encourage any of you to go back and look at some of this stuff. This is our history. And the reason why I would do this is that it's very clear that the problems that exist now in East Greensboro that call out for structural changes are deeply rooted in the developments of the 1980s. We have never solved those problems, and we're not going to solve the problems the way we're going through now.
Thank you. Questions? Our next speaker is, unless we're going to engage.
What was the date of that you did that for the Peacemaker?
1985, January 15th, 1985, I believe.
What do you suspect the cause of that trend is?
I think what was happening in Greensboro at the time was part of a national trend. There were declining rates of profit at the corporate level at the highest levels of the U.S. economy at the time, and corporations were downsizing, they were outsourcing, and the whole community suffered. But the part of the community that suffered the most was the black community. And this is historic. And you know, there are fundamental problems here that we have to look at, and we can only do that, Mr. Key, by going back and looking at the history of the period.
And would there be a viable solution to come out of this?
Well, I think that there are people in East Greensboro and people in West Greensboro who are part of this process of looking at this parity study and recognizing that the parity study is just an opening discussion. And even when the consultant came here and presented his findings, through discussions with people in the community, it was clear that the top-down approach to economic development in East Greensboro was not going to work. And even he amended some of his findings. And so now, on the basis of these discussions, what we're saying in CEEJ and other organizations is that we need a bottom-up a massive, concentrated, focused, bottom-up effort to rebuild the economy in East Greensboro, and part of that means small private ownership, cooperative ownership. So, for example, the co-op grocery store that's being discussed right now for Phillips Avenue, this is a very significant project because it addresses some of the fundamental problems that were articulated by these 8 leaders all the way back in 1985.
Okay. Ms. Bellamy-Small.
Do you mind if we can get a copy of that, of your article?
Certainly, I'll be happy to live it. Actually, can I make you a better copy? These were...
That's fine.
Yeah, I will get them to you.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for
very
your
much.
time. Michael Roberto, 317 South Chapman Street. I don't know, and I guess since I have your attention, Mayor Perkins, I think I'm going to direct most of my comments toward you. I mean, I'm directing them toward the council, but I really, since I haven't picked up the phone and called you about this, I think I'll just sort of like pretend we're doing one-on-one here, okay? Now, we've heard from a lot of learned people here tonight, right? I mean, I listened to the architect. The design is flawless. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the design of this place. There's nothing wrong with the idea of a performing arts center, okay? But have you noticed the difference, the class differences here between the proponents and the opponents? Does that, you're an educated man, does that strike a chord to you? I mean, do you understand that there are deep, deep issues involved here? Deep issues. Now, the design is not flawed, nor is the intent, but the process is extremely flawed. Because you know that I've come before the council and I've talked about poverty over and over again, and sometimes people question, who is this guy? Is he Dr. Roberto or Mr. Roberto? Well, it's Dr. Roberto, an economic and political historian. And I want to say to you that these numbers are probably flawed, but the process is even more flawed from the standpoint of democracy, just like Larry Morse said earlier, okay, and a couple of other people. This is supposed to be about a democratic process. You went before the citizens a few weeks ago and you said, we're going to be one Greensboro. One Greensboro. Check it out. Look at the differences between the proponents and the opponents tonight. Listen to what they're saying, okay? So it gets down to transparency, okay? It's about transparency, ultimately. And this council has made it known that compared to the last council, this council is about transparency. But when it appeared that this project, Mayor Perkins, was not going the way you wanted it to go because of the input from citizens in the city, then the whole question of the bond referendum became probable. Now, I don't have the time to go over the history here, but, I mean, when I read in the paper that that $20 million, which is supposedly pledged by the private sector here, is not even there, and I read that one of the task force members says in public, these people were not told at the beginning of the process that they had to divulge their identity, and it would not be fair for them to do so, and if they had to do it, it would wreck the entire project. So be it. Because that, Mr. Mayor, is a form of class warfare. Because the wealthy people in the city want this thing. We want this thing, too. I would love to have a performing arts center. right? And I know that it serves an educational function, too, even for poor kids. But poor kids may come to a concert, but then they have to go home. Go home to what? To the poverty, to the problems that we have been talking about for a long, long time here, okay? I mean, so where am I going with this in 43 seconds? This is about class warfare. This is about class warfare. We need this thing, but we need a whole lot of other things more importantly than we need this. Now, I could stand here for 10 hours and talk about a whole lot of stuff in response to some of the things that were said here tonight. But the bottom line is this. I unite with Dr. Wade tonight, okay? Now, isn't that amazing? Isn't it? Now, it should tell you something, Mr. Mayor, that when Senator-elect Wade and I are on the same turf here, then there's something profoundly important going on. Thank you.
That's Dr. Roberto, that's a good way to end tonight's public discussion. Thank you very much. Well, we're not having a public hearing. We're just having speakers. And all right, anybody else want to have their say? I want to make sure we get everybody. All right, here.